Às vezes, você se acostuma a um sistema que você está numa casa aberta e você não sai de dentro dela, porque você já perdeu o conceito de liberdade. A sua cela está aberta e você não sai. E às vezes você tem um conceito, uma ansiedade de liberdade maior, que lhe prendem na maior corrente, na prisão máxima, e você arrebenta e foge. Aí está a força no conceito que você tenha de liberdade ou não.
You've got to realize one thing, and that is you need to tame your wild, crazy mind. You got to tame it, all right? Your mind has a very, very bad habit, which we call self-cherishing. And I call it, what about me? What about me? What about me? What about me? And it's a bore, and it's a drag, and nobody wants to hear it. So you can just shut up and get off of it and give. That's all. Give. Give. Be here and give. Connect with people, right? And you're so busy giving, you don't have time to think about yourself. You're going to be a lot happier.
This is the time for awakening for humans on the planet. This is the time to wake up out of the madness, because the history of humanity is basically the history of insanity. But for the first time in the history of this insanity is the insanity threatening to destroy us. Mad intelligence. That's what humans have developed. You could call it cleverness. They're all clever, but mad. Mad intelligence. So we are coming to the end of this one way or another. Either we destroy ourselves or we wake up out of that dream, the nightmare. But to see your own madness is the beginning of healing and sanity, because there is in every human being not only the madness, there's also the sanity. Through the media, mostly what you get is the madness. But at the same time, there are millions of other humans who already have that awakening within them so that they can hear. It's liberating to see we are mad. Some people say, oh, that's depressing. It's not depressing, it's liberating. Mad, I'm mad. But I realize that I'm mad. Every child, an ego gradually begins to develop. One of the first things a child learns is his or her name. I am John. I am, and then come other things after the children grow up. I am a boy. I am a girl. I am strong. I am weak. The ego is always built on identification with this or that. The word I, the way it's used conventionally, is perhaps the greatest delusion. Because when you say I, you think you know who you are.
I'm here and I wanna go. Something tells me there's a struggle. How am I gonna say goodbye now? I know you won't like it.
Then the child gets toys. That's my car, little toy. That's mine. Somebody takes away the toy, the child is in extreme agony. It's mine.
I'll be with you till your last breath. Right here's a small list of all the things that scare me to death. I can't stand things that I can't understand, and I especially hate things I can't command. I don't like the unfamiliar, and I've got to be first. But I tell ya, without me, you could never be a Mandela. Who would know of Muhammad Ali without me? My name is Gus, I'm not a real person. More like a quality. Attach myself behind your eyes temporarily and blind you to anything you think you might wanna be. Make you promise me everything for fame, for idolatry. And when I leave you, you can never follow me. Find yourself confined in solitude. You will never hollow me.
I remember when I was 3 or 4 years old, going out in front of my house and, having a huge poop, like, right in front of the house on the sidewalk, and then running inside excited to bring my parents out, my mom and dad, and show them what I had done. I was so excited about it. And what was I? I was whipped. I was spanked and whipped for it. And violently, shame on you. Look what you did.
We've been trained and conditioned to shut down our spontaneous responses, our authentic and essential responses from a very early age. Don't cry. What's wrong? No, don't be scared. I mean, we're talked out of our feelings and shut down because nobody knows how to communicate from an emotional field.
Childhood is tough. Childhood is rough. All the other kids on the playground are telling us what's wrong with us and why we're not okay. And the bad part about it is when you're 7, 8, 9, 10, and 12, you believe it. You don't have the strength to reject it and say that's not true. You take it all in and make it part of your truth.
I was abused by my father when I was younger, and I carried it around. I didn't tell anybody. It's a weirdest thing because it's one of those events that makes you feel, it's a crime that makes you feel you committed it when you're the victim. Because it isn't all pain, there is pleasure in it. So you carry this around with you, that you were part of the crime. And you'll read this all the time when you hear victims of it speaking. I felt so guilty, and then the last guilt is when your father dies or the person dies and you haven't confronted them about it. And you think, well, time will heal it, but time doesn't heal it. It actually gets worse.
The idea of shadow has to be liberated. We must go into the places that scare us, into the darkness, and make friends with our demons. The wound is the key, because we are all wounded by birth. We are like, where am I? Who am I? Why am I here? Where is he? Where is she? And so we're constantly recreating until we make peace with loneliness and with the shame and with our own anger.
I can't kiss away these tears. I wouldn't miss your edges, your cliffs. They are clay, they are clues gone astray, finding the ones we refuse, and we breathe in the breeze and stir through the leaves that still fall on our feet, covering the lines we reveal. We are wounded in all the right places. I feel it all. I feel it
The problem is you have to learn your way through these things. You gotta fight your way through these things. And the big problem is when they medicate teenagers and children. Often at the request of the expert opinion of some fucking teacher that is having a hard time with a creative child, essentially. Now, when you medicate a kid through those years, that kid's not learning how to deal with depression or anger. The discomfort that the child's depression and anger brings the parent or the teacher, the idea that they would medicate him, it's really a selfish thing. It's really the teacher's problem and the parent's problem. So what they wind up doing is medicating these kids. And then the kids find their way, of course, like other teenagers, into self-medication along with that medication. And that's a recipe for disaster. And all these shooters in Columbine, and Kip Kinkle up in Oregon, and that kid down south were all on antidepressants throughout their teenage years. And what happened was they got to a point where the rage just blew. You kids got a lot of energy, find something to do with the energy. Get off your ass, mom, dad, and do something, rather than just put a pill into their mouth.
I am depressive by nature, I'm fairly melancholic by nature. I'm not Captain Chuckles, you know. When things were really bad, things got really bad, you know, almost to ultimate point. I was offered, you know, happy pills. You know, take a pill. So you take a pill. take another pill. It doesn't matter. It does matter. I declined it because it's probably wrong, but I just think a human being has to understand the process of this thing. To almost stand back and try and externalize the pain and the anguish and the loss and the grief and look at it and say, what is that? Recognize it. Just so, as I say, you can take out the minutes, I know you, get back in there. I know it. I know who you are.
Facing your demons. All right, being a victim, you know. I am suffering. Everything is always fucked up for me. Nobody understands. That's a demon, you understand? And it took me years of not being honest with myself, running from the truth, denying what was in my face, blaming everybody else. He's an asshole, he's fucked up, look at her, look at them, look ah. But then there was a common denominator, me. Then I had to really fess up, you know? I'm full of shit. I need a colonic. Because I can easily just sink. Yeah, I can sink into the depths.
I have seen trouble, trouble saw me. I danced around the trouble tree. I have seen beauty staggered on me. I have seen trouble. I'm seeing double, I can't feel. My heart is hurt, nothing feels real. The sand in my eyes, I can't conceal. Everything is staggered on me. I've seen trouble, trouble saw me. I danced around the trouble tree.
There is in every human being an accumulation of past emotional pain, and emotional pain that is not fully faced in the moment that it arises, remnants of it become lodged in the body. And that emotional pain is a ball of unhappiness, one could almost call it, that lives in you. I call that the pain body that human beings carry inside. And this is what causes overreactions. Just an innocent comment that your partner makes to you could act as a trigger. Once it's engaged in drama, it doesn't want the drama to end, it wants more. It also goes into your mind. So your thinking becomes deeply negative. Your thinking is fueled by the old emotion. It feeds on every negative thought that it makes you have. It loves negative thinking. One negative thought after another. How dreadful this is. You can hate yourself and tell yourself how much you hate yourself. You can hate your partner and tell yourself how much you hate your partner. Fighting doesn't help. What helps is becoming friendly with it. What does that mean? Say, oh, I can feel all this. Look at that. So, and then you feel it. There it is. You allow it to be. You become the observing presence rather than it. And then the old emotion cannot take you over because you're still there. Here's the emotion which you allow to be. You are the space around the emotion. You're not the emotion anymore. That transforms it and it frees you from being its slave. Realize your own thought processes are creating suffering for yourself. And for most people on this planet, the only spiritual teacher they have is their suffering. And then the suffering becomes an opening.
Trouble, take the back seat. Trouble, take a rest. fight, put me to the test. I've held my heart so close to my chest. You leave me wanting, I can't forget now. Somewhere is real. Oh, Namakambwe. Namakambwe. Oh, Namakambwe. Yeah. Uno para que le va a libar uno wet oh Namakambwe, yeah, ngai Namakambwe, sangi baneko.
And I believe that God has created a void in every man. And the only thing that can fill that void is really God himself. And when men don't find God, they start looking to fill the void everywhere else. Some will do it with drugs, some will do it with alcohol, some will do it with sex, some will do it with personal achievement, some will become workaholics. So that's what it is. Man is trying to find satisfaction. And he's either going to find it in God or he's going to search for it in vain in things.
Addictions arise in the absence of being in touch with the essential aliveness that you are. Then you need a substitute. I need to smoke. Or an addictive eater. There's enormous need behind it. I need that. Or sex, it's very clear. You can see how close it was. You want to take something in. Because I'm not fulfilled. I need to add more to me, who I think I am, myself. More experience, more knowledge, more suffering. I need more of it, more drama. I need more relationships, more possessions, more time.
يداني دعانه داني ودعانه يداني دعانه داني ودعانه يداني دعانه داني ودعانه يدان دعانه داني ودعانه يداني دعانه داني ودعانه يداني دعانه داني ودعانه يداني دعانه داني ودعانه يدان دعانه داني ودعانه.
That there is going to be enough to make us happy in this world is one of the basic illusions that carries us through life. We're born hungry in every level. We're hungry for everything. All our senses are hungry for input. When you don't get enough, you think that there is enough somewhere. And until you get enough and realize that it isn't enough and it'll keep coming back, you keep dreaming that romantic image that this will be enough. This relationship, this car, this thing, that, you know, because wanting doesn't stop, no matter how much you get.
All I want is, what I want is, what I get is, once I get it, did I get it? Keep it going on. 1, 2, yeah. All I want is, what I want is, what I get is. Yeah, what I want is surface, what I need is something deeper. Lost culture, rap with plastic features. Some vulture came and piqued my interest. Brochures that promise the world no secrets. But what's delivered delivers me no different. But what's delivered delivers me no different. But what's delivered delivers me no different. But what's delivered delivers me no different.
给我这个迷彩的颜色，让我早上那个天可以学会了徘徊好与坏，对与错，每个人在说，或者现在告诉自己不要知道那个沉默。给我这个麦克风的时候开50双，为什么现在告诉我开始说唱？每个人控制自己心里希望，或者现在给我一个机会继续隐藏。
We kind of like live as if we're supposed to be, all of us, kings all the time. And all have everything we want. And when we don't, there's something wrong with us. And we get angry and, you know, we take our suffering so personally. How could this happen to me?
سمعت كل في الهوى يغني كل العلامة وعليها وفنة سمعت كل في الهوى يغني كل العلامة وعليها وفنة وأنا بعد فرقت بمشاكل
They sell broken dreams that can't help ya. We want the food, the clothing, and the shelter. Let's say keep working the cards that they dealt ya. And if you stand up and fight, then they'll jail ya. They sell broken dreams that can't help ya.
Everybody wants to behave just like an American. It's amazing. It's amazing to me. I don't think there are always happy people there. I don't think there are. And there should be unhappy because of what's happening in the community, right? It's not enough to have money to be happy. Money doesn't make people happy. But it is peace of mind you have. And I will be surprised if you have peace of mind. Because there is no family, individualistic life. Everybody is running after money. We have no time to sit down, talk peacefully, be friends. It's a disaster.
Every death is an abrupt one. Every count is a corrupt one. Without no cash up in the trust fund. Every cat with a gap want a plus one. Every guest want a plus one. Every tenement's a penitent. So every tribe man is innocent. Time served should be the sin spent. Everybody wanna hit a lick. Every one of y'all is getting pimped. Every bank note is promissory. Every broke motherfucker finna form a gang. When we come, we take it. Every Mac want a Cadillac. Every roach is a resident. Every truth ain't evident. Every slave story presidents. Every uprising consequence. Every time it be something sweet. Every banker is a fucking thief. Everybody better holler with me. Every fiend need $1.50. Every crime that I did was petty. Every criminal is rich already. Every landlord got a complex. Every single is a bomb threat. Every seller may hate my verse. Everybody, they gon' get it first. Every broke motherfucker finna form a gang. And when we come, we taking everything. We won't never know. Sorry, I got caught up looking at my hair and the thing, and it looked like it was messed up. One more time.
We want the food, the clothing, and the shelter. We want the food, the clothing, and the shelter. We want the food, the clothing, and the shelter. They sell broken dreams that can't help us. They sell broken dreams that can't help us. They sell broken.
बड़ी Qu'est-ce que tu as trouvé là? Ça fait mal pour combien de temps?
Ceux qui viennent ici là, ils font que la même bêtise là. On ne nous donne rien. Des fois on nous promet, après c'est fini, quand on finit de filmer, on part, on a fini. Il est en train de regarder la vieille femme qui est en train de toucher cette tuberculose à la cuisine. Ceci, cela. Après, c'est lui qui aura l'argent. Et même moi maintenant, je perds l'enfant et mes petits-fils ne verront même pas le visage. Là, c'est un 100 000 francs que vous allez déposer tout de suite.
Que vous menez ici là, nous on ne fait pas ça. On nous fiche. Nous on ne voit pas les résultats des choses que vous venez là. Parce que je n'ai pas beaucoup de choses de parler, mais on doit voir comme tu vas nous faire. Si c'est du gobé, si c'est pour venir gobé, tu vas nous gobé. Si tu n'es pas gobé, on va voir.
Bismillahi selanjai kodam arahmani roben dokolo. Bismillahi layu selanjai kodam arahmani roben dokolo. Jabamna minna dembesaya esromul yolo kullai wadule. Jabamna minna dembesaya esromul yolo kullai wadule. Wapani nota kida yera ben awlu jembuti mi hore sukalemo. Wapani nota kida yera benda awlu jembuti ko sukalemo. Ko suka wonno. Kosuka wonno mimi kurka alingo yimo ko suka wonno mimi kurka alingo yimo tekle manyi hare lamde koy welani tekle manyi hare lamde koy welani sayre. Mina demba sayre. Jaba mina demba sayre. Sura mulyo mi me pullo ye watuple. Wapani notade yo yera penda. Allu jambe de mi hore su. Ko suka wonna. Ko suka wonna mi kuka. Ko suka wonna. Ko suka wonna mi kuka. Jaba mina demba sayre. Jaba mina demba sayre. Jaba mina demba sayre. Demba sayre mina demba sayre. Jaba mina demba sayre. Jaba mina demba sayre. Jaba mina demba sayre.
Les gens arrivent, ils nous racontent du blabla, ils nous racontent des conneries. Voilà, donnez-nous vos images. Nous allons faire ceci, nous allons faire cela. Nous sommes fatigués de ça. Nous sommes pauvres, on compte sur vous. C'est par votre aide, par ces images-là. Voyez. Prochainement, vous n'en aurez plus. Même ces images-là vont disparaître. Nous ne parlons, nous ne parlons pas. Ta joga kabib ta mun yiki to ban suwa nu ta kabib wa mo yi no
bismillah tlanjay ko dana arahmani yropendo galaja bismillah oh tlanjay ko dana arahmani yropendo galaja jaba min namin demba sayre yesra mon yo mi pollo ye batula Sramonio, lo watuple.
Makume mwasema na mike. Sunsu papantie. Oma yenya amutare. Makume mwasema na mike. Sunsu papantie. Oma yenya amutare.
Deşilinya komata parlar.
Deşilşa xudi seçile. Bu xudi şadı to buçu. Dimi seçile çite. Çatuşu şadı to mi işleti.
Deşami kakula.
Ya xudi mi kake. Xolu to şito bubu.
Stum stum dum dum. Dum 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 stum dum dum dum. Stum.
because we get bombarded and bombarded and bombarded with the images so many times that our brain loses the ability to really react to them. You know, it could be that the pace of the world is blocking out that still small voice of God. You know, everybody's looking for God in the bombardment. You know, earthquakes end. Storms come to an end. The media never shuts off.
You know, they give us the Bible, they give us the Quran, they give us the Talmud, they give us daily newspapers, the 6 o'clock news, pronouncements by politicians, government policies, sitcoms, advertising, and none of it bears much resemblance at all to what's really going on in the universe. And when's the last time you heard anyone complain?
TV is an emanation of the triumph of the blasé. I want to say I think it's a disgrace. How can the blasé be triumphing so? They can't possibly have a good army. I mean, they're blasé. They're not known for their gung-ho. But they're kicking ass right now. The blasé are kicking ass. I could see how a blasé saint could be a good thing, but to have blasé as the status quo for everybody, that's a supreme bummer. That's a gigantic psychological limitation.
I used to talk more than I used to listen. Now I reverse my position. Now I can spot with precision those on a mission and those who love me. The dissing of those who seem to suppose they govern me. The unpretty, the ugly, the unlovely can no longer hope to escape discovery. All of them lack subtlety and none of them have no real quality to them. Philosophy is just me. Cancer upon we society cannot sustain them cause them too greedy. Communicating lively but without a sound. This is what makes my world go round. Communicating lively but without a sound. This is what makes my world go round. Makes my world go round.
You are dominated by the corporate powers. They never leave you alone. They are with you in the bedroom. So you are never alone. So there is no choices. You think you choose, but you do not choose.
And we have huge propaganda systems. Public relations industry is fundamentally a propaganda system. It's an enormous industry. Developed first in Britain and the United States. These are the two countries that were most free and democratic. And that's where you need a propaganda system. Because there you can't control people by force anymore. So you have to control their beliefs and attitudes. And this is very conscious. The core of democracy is the engineering of consent. And you're directed, you know, by the educational system, by the media to have the aspiration of becoming a millionaire. And then if you don't quite make it, you didn't meet your aspiration. But there are other values, you know. There's another value to say, okay, I won't be a millionaire, but I'll help people who really need help. And you don't have to go to Ethiopia to find this. You can do it right in the United States. There'll be a dozen letters from young people in Canada and the United States and England and so on, saying, you know, I don't like what's going on, what can I do? Interestingly, I never get that question from people in poor countries. They don't ask me what they should do, they tell me what they're doing. It's only in the wealthy, privileged sectors that people have no idea what to do. Elsewhere, they do things. And that's part of our education and indoctrination, to make you feel there is nothing you can do. And it has to really be imposed strenuously in the richer and more powerful countries, because you can do a lot. In fact, you can do anything.
Changing, so free occasion, so many ways to say things. Music, silent movies play out. Nothing comes out of my way. When scared, wanna shout. Nothing comes out of my way. Paralyzed, unable, glued to sofa, watching cable, fable, tower, babel. Hamper communication, so really, really, really wanna be better from really see things clearly. They really what you spawn. Please help me take out my phone. Don't run away when I lift up more. Forever grateful, lions roar. Forever grateful, I am your future husband, future wife, future friend, future life, future truth changing. Realize the amazing, we're better off communicating.
How do I find peace of mind? How do I find that place inside of me where I can stop listening to this inner noise and start really listening?
Voice. You have all of this chatter that you have to kind of clear out. Your parents, your aunts, your grandmama's voice, everybody's voice is in your head.
You are the
it's
problem.
the chorus thing, isn't it? You are a twat.
Wow,
I'm going to
interesting.
believe that for a second.
Yeah.
Just might sound, you think it sounds
So this is a tape. See, there goes the
character is coming on, he's taking over my mouth, he's taking over my phone, he's driving my
car.
car.
Stop, pump the brakes. So it's just a switch in the internal tape and weeding out all of that external and historical static.
There's no way out. We are all stuck in our minds.
I think one of the common misunderstandings about meditation is that you empty your mind and you become very still and there is this void, you know. Actually what happens when you sit in meditation is you feel very, very uncomfortable. You know, your mind's going crazy, it's like it's trapped in a cage and it wants to get out and you don't want to be there. You want to be down the pub or watching television or doing anything, but you don't want to be there looking at this wall, you know. So it is uncomfortable and it should be uncomfortable. That's the process. It's like it's your ability to stay with that, to actually begin to explore a very simple question in a way. Why is it uncomfortable? Why is it so uncomfortable to be still?
To appreciate the present moment, there needs to be a gap in the stream of thinking. Most of it is unnecessary, some of it is useful, but most of it actually interferes with the smooth flow of life. It creates so much suffering, so many problems that actually have no existence here and now. Part of the madness is to live as if the future were more important than the present moment, which is how most people live. It's completely insane, so you miss the aliveness of life for some projected future aliveness or fulfillment. There is no future, there's only this, the present moment. Stillness is already here. It's an essential part of who you are. And all you need to do is get in touch with that. How do I get in touch with that? The easiest way is to become friendly with the present moment. Even if the present moment is noisy, you become friendly with the noise of the present moment, and then there's a background of stillness. Can you sense that you are? No. This is it. This is it. It's always going to be this. And this is who you are. I am. And to sense that is joyful. And that joy is not through anything external. It's inherent.
Say die, you make me wanna be a better guy. I wonder why.
The human being is great. It is you are good. You know, this is important to get your basic goodness and stop beating yourself up.
We have this peculiar shame about ourselves. We have this contingent state of worrying about why we are and feeling bad about it. We feel bad about the fact that we masturbate, that we shit, that we have to have sex in order to reproduce. What is to be ashamed of in that? I mean, how bizarre that the state that we are given. This is how you make another one of yourself. You put this penis into that vagina and you pump out lots of seed and another baby gets made. And we spend our lives not allowing that to be on television, as if it is something to be ashamed. And words that describe it, like fuck or cunt or something, are made taboo words. Whereas kill, cruel, torture, we could use those words when just describing the traffic. And they're not taboo words, but those are things we do of which we should be absolutely ashamed. Completely ashamed.
Am I alone? Yeah, 'cause I can hear you. Yeah, 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 yeah. I already been and go. You know, I know. Together we all go. I hear it now. I hear it loud. I hear the sounds. Tell it like you know. 'Cause you know how it goes. Feel them so.
I think that the light and dark are like these amazing lovers, and that they need each other, they balance each other, they hold each other, they embrace each other at a certain point in the day. Every day they like touch each other as they pass, you know? And then there's this third force, the shadow, which is kind of the ego part, the part that separates the night from the dark and puts us in a position of thinking we have to be like a good girl or a good boy or a good person, instead of being a real person and a vulnerable person We just don't trust. We've been taught not to.
If you substitute content for happy, you'll probably find that you're happy. Because we've associated happiness with laughing, you know, and smiling and throwing beach balls to your children. And I've never been that guy. So I thought, well, maybe I'm not happy. But if you switch it for content, the practice of contentment, you think, oh God, I'm happy. I'm a happy man. Oh, lucky me.
And we've all got something to be thankful for. Stop bitching. Stop complaining. Stop worrying. Worrying is praying for what you don't want. So stop praying for what you don't want and just let go.
The world is beautiful, placed here from the love of mama, passed down from my papa. Voices from beyond, they call me. Wisdom speaks loud from the corners, and each step it moves me on. Isn't it the same for you? Isn't this the honest truth? The seeds for us, the things that we should trust. It's all about me, it's all about you. All the lies, all the truth, the usual, the unusual, the known, the unknown. It's so beautiful, but I pray please lift me up and help me stand. We're moving on just hand in hand, but it always comes back down to me, to you, to you, to me. Each step moves us on, here we go. Onward, forward, still miles to go. Each step moves us on, here we go. Onward, forward, still miles to go. Each step moves us on, here we go. Onward, forward, still miles to go. Each step moves us on, here we go. Onward, forward, still miles to go.
And now I'm old, more than 80. I'm not afraid of death. You see. To be or not to be, that's the question. If I could not move, if I could not work freely, if I could not hear, I could not see, I could not eat, what's the use of living? Living would not be. If to live is a delight, then live on. Live as long as you can. If to be is not good, then you be not to be, I think.
I'm not afraid of death. What I'm afraid of is old age. Once you get old, you become weak, you become powerless, don't know what to do. You can see people working, you know how to do it, but you cannot do it. This is what I'm starting to feel now.
In my case, there's a fear of not doing all I want to do before dying, because I feel that I still have time, no? There's still sun on the walls, no? But it's a sun that's coming down. It's given me a sense of loneliness I didn't have before, a sense of solitude, a sense of, for instance, young people keep to themselves, so older people need to have friends more or less their age, but then those friends die and disappear. I keep losing people all over the years, and young people have their own lives. They have their own time. They don't have time for others, no? Or they pay polite visits or polite conversation or how are you, but you see that they want to go. I never think of myself wrinkled, no? I never think that I have white hair. But I do have a sensation sometimes when I glimpse myself at the mirror, I say, oh, how ugly. And that is sad.
As you get old, it's a constant process of loss. I have lost so many good friends. One very recently, dear, dear friend who died suddenly about a month ago. And that's very upsetting. When you lose parents, of course, and they're unfortunate, sometimes children, certainly friends, and power. Your eyes, your ears, your ability to run and to get up. And it takes 5 minutes to get up off your chair and get moving. Those are big losses. And that's what we deal with, is the loss. I guess death is the final loss. You lose yourself.
Pero no es de soledad.
never put makeup. I never dye my hair. When I go to the States, my friends, they tell me, why don't you make a facelift, you know, to hide your wrinkles? Why should I hide my wrinkles? I am above 70. I am proud of my age. I'm proud of my wrinkles.
But there's an added something, which, now let me think about what that might be. The sense that life is not limitless, and I'm sitting with people who are stupidly wasting their time. I'm a better therapist because I'm impatient with that. I don't excuse it, and I say, well, you know, that's who they are. You know, my tendency is to want to shake them up and say, wait, the days are getting shorter. Wake up.
Aging is going from a perceptual stance of ego to a perceptual stance of soul. You become wisdom. You don't have to know anything. You become wisdom. You become compassionate. And you give up all the striving. Anywhere where I drop the body, that's the perfect place to die. And we each die at our appointed time. It's beautiful.
If you can face death, if you can look death in the eye, then he will reward you by letting you live, really live, every second that you have left.
Kaseli kadua kasara kabo manyesro kola kayele yele nanke masa alala netombe yele akanyanyini. Kaseli kadua kasara kabo manyesro kola kayele yele nanke masa alala netumbe yele kanyanyini. Kaseli kadua kasara kabo manyesro kola kayele yele nanke masa alala netumbe yele kanyanyini. Kaseli kadua kasara kabo manyesro kola kayele yele nanke masa alada ntombe yele.
I watched the last of my friends who were diagnosed together around the same time die this summer. There's really no way to put into words the loss that you feel for that. The other side to that is that when your friend is dying and in bed and can't talk and all you can do is wave your finger at each other, you know that there's a tremendous amount of love there. Money doesn't count. Possessions don't count.
Kaseli kadua kasara kabo manyesro kola Naka yele yele nanke masa alala. Netombe yele kanyeni.
I'm beginning to find myself again, but I don't know what my survival will be. And then I think, well, does anyone really know what their survival is going to be?
Yeah, I'm going to light this and just say a short prayer. Because if you involve God in your work, you have to succeed. There's no failure. This opens the spiritual eye in your brain. Okay? The spiritual eye. Because most of our brain we never use, you know. And that's the spiritual side that we should cultivate to serve God properly. Here's the last.
The central dynamic of history is not a conflict between God and Satan. It's not a conflict between good and evil. It's a conflict between ignorance and enlightenment.
It would be easy to become religious, I think. It's an effort not in an orthodox sense, but seriously to suddenly just depart from all the sciences and decide that there is a completely unidentified set of quite detailed and purposeful forces that are driving us.
It's never random. There's nothing random in the universe. That at the most fundamental levels of nature, there's one single pattern in which you and I and our thoughts and our behaviors and our interactions are actually part of an overall pattern.
It makes no sense to me, none of it. You know, we're not very significant as creatures, you know. It's over. It begins, it's over. And for me, it's a blessed oblivion. Nothing, the absolute thrill of nothing, you know, the relief of nothing. God, nothing, nothing, wow.
The more you can be an individual and be all of it at the same time, you've got it made.
Mere Gurudev Charanon par Sumana Shraddha ke arpit hai. तुम्ही हो भाव में मेरे विचारों में पुकारो तुम्ही हो भाव में मेरे विचारों में पुकारो बना ले यंत्र अब मुझको मेरे सर्वत्र समर्पित है मेरे गुरुदेव चरणों पर सुमन श्रद्धा के अर्पित है.
O son and daughter of noble birth, now the time has come for you to seek a path. As your breath stops, visions will appear, and while on this journey from life into death, if you should find yourself calling out, O Lord of great compassion, am I beautiful enough? Am I wearing the right clothes? Do I have the right connections to get me into where I'm going? To these concerns I say, do not worry. With this kiss, there are revelations tattooed upon our lips. Revelations is more easily read on account of this silent pact with recognition, where I'm beginning to see that we are slowly becoming healed.
I take a moment to myself so I can heal myself, to feel myself, be real myself. Life's addictions and afflictions cause abrasion from the fiction. Sometimes it's easier to live in fiction. I can run, but I can't hide from the pains that reside down deep inside. There is no pill that can be swallowed. There is no guru that can be followed.
So it's a great opportunity for construction, for new ideas, for getting closer to the truth and moving past organized religion and make it real and deal with the chaos and the pain while you're home into the universe. That's heaven and hell right there that we're walking every day with it. You can change it. You can live hell tomorrow and be in heaven today, right now. It's nothing esoteric out there. It's right here.
There's no escaping from my own history. Those that I hurt and those that hurt me. I was dead for 1,000,000 years before I was born. I'll be dead for 1,000,000 more after I'm gone. So I live to give something that can live on. Like the way you hum a song when the music's gone. Like the warmth of the sand when the sun goes down. I'm sitting with myself, nobody else is around.
You know what, whether Lord is Buddha or Jesus or Allah or whatever, if he's a God, he's gonna know you're a cool guy and you ain't gotta worry. If there's a heaven, you're going.
I say, why must I feel like this today? I'm a soldier, but afraid. Sometimes to face the things that may block the sun from shining rays and fill my life with shades of gray. Still I long to find a way. So today I pray for grace. I pray for grace. I pray for grace. A long, long time I find the words to say how much I'm grateful for my life today. None of us can live a perfect life, the kind that we see on naked night. And sometimes we all just lose sight of the pain that will guide us from dark into light. When we fall down, yes, we get up, and sometimes we just need a little bit of love to help to make it through another day, and through the night into light into a Saturday. So in the morning when I'm waiting for the sun to raise, and my head's a little foggy like I'm in a haze, I remind myself that every little good thing is gonna be okay, okay. I take a breath, slow down and say yes. I slow down and say, I say yes, yes, yes.
Stop. Be here now. Be in this moment. We live in a dream. Our lives are fragile. All of us have one foot on a banana peel and the other foot on the grave. The surrender is not an option because you can only fight it so long. It's a cork floating in the middle of the ocean, screaming, I must control it, I must have control. It's hard to just let life happen.
Nothing wrong with it. Nothing wrong
I've been away for a long time, seen, waiting for someone to rescue me. One woman came with a gift for me. Go find yourself and come find me. But I've been away for too long, you see. I've been away from the hurt in me. Wake up in the morning for the light has come. Roll to the floor and I start my song. Come into my body and I watch what comes. Tears stream down when I'm all alone. But I'm not gonna let this trap me inside no more. I'm not gonna let this trap me inside no more.
I'm here and I wanna go.
I've been away under the stormy sky. I'm coming home now.
I'm here and I wanna go.
I've been away under the stormy sky. Leave a light on for me, because I'm coming home. My heart is sad to leave Sugar Town. Come with me, my baby. We go under the stormy sky. Jean-Paul, je le violon, la belle accordéon. Danse avec moi, bébé. We go under the stormy sky.
So, thank you for finding your time here in spite of all the other attractions at the festival. And as a reward for you being so faithful, you will get the privilege of meeting one of the creators of this movie, and you'll be allowed to ask him questions. But first of all, he'll be able to share some of the background story associated with this movie. I had the privilege of talking to him yesterday, and I found it fascinating. So rather than me talking, I asked Ben to tell us something about how it all started with this movie, the idea that you got, and everything around that.
Why doesn't you just come a bit nearer and come and sit round
that would be
and
a
help
great
me
idea.
out here? Because it's difficult talking to an empty space. You just come a bit forward and then we can actually have a talk about it. Thank you. Hi. So the intention was to go off around the world and to discover what it was all about, what being human being was about. So we went to 50 locations around the world. And we took 13 tracks. We made the tracks up before we left. And each musician that we met, we played the tracks to. And they selected and improvised and did a music session to the backing track. So that on each track you get about 15 different nationalities playing. And then we would ask to talk to philosophers, doctors, policemen, normal people on the streets. and celebrities and treat them the same. And we would talk to them about different subjects like anger or grace or madness. And we were fortunate to get like Eckhart Tolle, who just released a book and wanted to talk to us about how we are all mad. And then we would go around and we would interview people and we would film the culture around these different places. And so we ended up with 1,400 hours of footage and 500 hours of music. And that then took about 3 years to edit together. And it was released and was nominated for 2 Grammys and got quite a following. In fact, it was the most pirated DVD ever in Asia, which was interesting. The kind of audience for it were people who really enjoyed world music. And originally, we came up with the idea and we went to Chris Blackwell of Island Records and said, we've made this album of world music and we've sampled all these tracks. And he said, great, I love it. I want to put it out there. Trouble is, you have to make what's called a DVD. And in those days, there weren't any DVDs around. So he would only release a music album with a DVD, and he said you had to make a film about it. So that was the first one. And this is the second one, which was an attempt to get some of the shadow of life, some of the darkness of life, some of the what about me, or what about me, or what about me. So it's trying to look at the narcissism of the world. How everybody looks at a TV and thinks about themselves or watches other people in an African country and relates themselves to it. So it's really looking at the babbling mind and the madness that we go through when we are left alone with the world. Yeah, that's sort of really what we have to say. It was amazing to travel 6 months, a different country every week. So we would arrive on a Monday, and we would get together with our fixers, and we would meet all the celebrities, and then we would go out on the streets and meet normal people and talk to people about just what was it like to be a human being, and record as much music as we could. So in there, you've got Michael Stipe playing with a busker on the street. You've got all sorts of people who, really, really humble musicians that, gave up their time and put themselves, risks to themselves. Because the people who put the money up for it, they had no creative input. So we were allowed to do anything we like. So we'd go off into Africa, and I mean, the China version is great because we talked to these 2 little old ladies in a place called Kunming in China.
Is there those 2 talking about TV, how wonderful it is now?
Yeah. So those 2 little old ladies were, we didn't know what they were saying. We had an interpreter who said to them, what do you think of television? And of course, they're in a matriarchal community, okay? This is a community run by women. Women run the banks, women do the jobs, and the men are subservient to the women. A bit like patriarchy in flipped over. And we had no idea what they said until we got back to the edit suite and we got it translated. And of course, they're taking the piss. They're saying, oh yes, our lives would be nothing without television. Well, they don't have television. They've never been on television. Same with the African people. This lady said, why are you filming me? I'm just a grandmother chopping vegetables. I mean, we never see any of this. And so we really wanted to show the madness of how much culture is represented on TV. And we wanted to call up our own mistakes. And a lot of people who see the film, they think, oh, it's quite spiritual and you must know quite a lot about all these issues, and we didn't know anything. All we really did was we got with these gurus like Ram Das and Bhagwan Das, and we told them our problems. And they came up with some wisdom, and we filmed it, and we put it up there. But really, we were just talking about how screwed up we were. And then asked people to sing songs and make music about it. And then put it all together in this sort of mishmash of music and philosophy and spirituality and all sorts of things.
Actually, I must be fair or frank with you that when I started watching the movie, my first thought was like, oh, yet another artistic movie that I will never understand. Someone wants to express something. But the longer I watched it, the more I was falling in love with it. And especially the final two parts about the loss and the grace, the music follows what's being said, and I found it really moving.
Yeah, well, we tried to break the rules. So we would talk to that old lady about getting old. And, you know, there was one lady, there's a blonde lady in Mexico who was running for president of Mexico. And she said, I go to California and my friends told me to get a facelift to get rid of my wrinkles. Well, I've earned these wrinkles. Every wrinkle on my face has a story behind it. Why would I want to get rid of them? So we would try and find things that normally you would cut out and go, oh no, let's not say that. And try and sort of make some interesting realizations, really. And it was difficult filming it. I mean, 6 months on the road, a different country every week. All the bacteria in every country hits you as you get off the aeroplane. And you have to work. I mean, I used to fall asleep with the camera in my hand after 18 hours of filming with the batteries on charge. And I'd wake up in the morning and, get the camera out and film everything. So hence 1,400 hours of footage.
It's amazing. Crazy. How many were you in the team?
There was me, Duncan Bridgman and Jamie Catter, who are the sort of musician directors. And that's it, really. There was a friend of Jamie's who was doing stills, who occasionally did a second camera. But that's it. And you know, you have to understand, the first time we did this, we had the first laptop, Apple laptop, the first Final Cut Pro software to edit, 001. We literally had to read the handbook on the aeroplane. And we had 5 editors who would all do a treatment, and to start, because we had so much footage, we had to make little boxes and put them all together. So actually what you're watching is something that totally innovated documentary and music video, and sort of tied them all together and created a whole genre of films that have come out. In fact, I was in Lake Titicaca about 5 years after it was released, and we picked up a hitchhiker in a bus about 50 miles away from nowhere. And he had one in his bag, and he carries it around with him. There's a beach in Thailand where they play it every Thursday and have done for religiously, like a sort of spiritual ceremony every week, like church.
Wow.
On the beach. So it got a bit of a sort of cult following, really. And I suppose.
And are you talking of the first part or the
no,
second?
the
second one,
yeah.
Because I understand that the first one was really successful, even commercially and famous. But this is something that is still waiting to be discovered, I would say.
So the first one, called One Giant Leap, which I encourage you to see, was nominated for 2 Grammys, had big posters up on Sunset Boulevard, and was world famous. And then the producers had an interview with Simon Fuller, who does X Factor and America's Got Talent. I mean, he wanted something for his coffee table, because when people came round to talk to him, they didn't want to talk about Spice Girls or X Factor because it was boring. So he wanted something on his coffee table that he could talk about that would make him deeply spiritual and an interesting person. So he gave us £1 million for a DVD to put on his coffee table. So we went off for 4 years and we made the second one. And in the end, we presented him with the DVD and he said, "Thank you very much." And then he didn't do anything. So he gave the making of, which was a 13-part TV series, to Channel 4 in England. And that was shown at 1:30 on a Wednesday evening. 1:30 in the morning. Strange. And he didn't know what to do with this film. So he just put it on his coffee table. And so what we're doing now is that the 2 producers bought it back off him for £100,000, which is very cheap considering it cost $1 million to make. And they're re-releasing it on the internet. So we're launching a massive website where you can download the music, you can watch all the films, and hopefully we'll get back to that cult following that we had on the first one. But it may be out of date. What do you think?
You never know until you try, I guess.
You never know, exactly. Anyone want... We think so.
Despite what... Oh, sorry, I was just commenting. Seems not worth it, that's. But despite what you were saying, I kind of was with you for a bit on is this one of these arty movies that are just going to say nothing, and then I got we missed the first part, unfortunately. What I wanted to say was I thought okay, really? Okay. I thought it was truly artistic. I thought it was true art, because the way you blended together the visual and the music, synchronized them, but painted pictures with words, with the music, with the pictures, was really, truly stunning, actually. I now want to see the whole thing again from the beginning. You've answered my questions, which I had about the economics and the music, which I didn't understand, the economics of it. Yeah, that was it, really. I was answering your question. I think it's a timeless piece. Yeah. It's for those that couldn't hear that, it's a timeless piece.
Well, that's why I brought it here, because I think it's about time people saw it. And for me, there's a big change in spiritual filmmaking. Whereas the first film was all about we are all one and everything is light and everything is beautiful. I think there's a big transition in films that are trying to tell stories about the spiritual aspect, which is let's look into our shadow. Let's look into the box in our bedroom where we hide all those shadowy feelings, and let's get them out and let's start talking about them. We talk about sexual abuse in the film. We talk about madness, about getting stuck in our heads, about television and the internet just filling our heads with madness. And that is, in a way, the new direction that we need to go in spiritually. We've had thousands of years where we all meditate ourselves into glorious light and happiness, but if we ignore the shadow, then we end up a little mad, which is really about what the film's about. Let's look at the shadow, let's get it out, let's talk about it, and maybe we won't let the shadow leak out of ourselves from the side, you know, when we get off Facebook. You know, Facebook is breeding a generation of people who are showing just the most beautiful things about my life.
Can I, while I've got a mic, sorry, can I come back on what you just said
Please
there?
do.
Because I think it's, for me, watching that, it would be really wrong to emphasize the fact that you were looking at the shadow, in my view. I think actually quite the reverse. Obviously you've got people to talk about some very difficult things like aging and dying and loss, but actually it was, what came across to me was quite the reverse. It was beautiful, it was uplifting, because they were talking about something that was real, like when you had someone lifting someone up for funeral pyre. I didn't find that depressing or sad. That's the whole point. It's, you know, so I didn't find any of that depressing or sad. By talking about difficult things, it was uplifting, not depressing. And the other thing that comes across, which again is beautiful, is the fact that you're looking at all these different people who look so different and sound so different and even have different music, but you're blending them, showing the commonality between them all. They're all the same, really. That's obviously one of the things that comes across. An African woman in the middle of a village somewhere, a Chinese people in front, you know, they're all, that's what's so lovely, isn't it? You've made those connections. So I just want to say that because I think if you talk about the shadow, I think you'd be talking about I don't think that's the right thing.
I think that's a very good point. Thank you. There you go. You see, I know nothing.
I would subscribe to that actually, because there was honesty in it, and that was what I found really encouraging. Yeah. Exactly as you said, Facebook generation shows off or shows things that how they want to be seen. These people didn't care about it. They would put the cards on the table, as we say.
It's very refreshing to get a Chinese woman in the middle of China saying something that is really true, you know, in sarcastically, she's saying, no, we're fine without television. We don't really need it, but she was getting the temptation to tell us what we wanted to hear, but with this sarcasm, which is refreshing, you know. Some of the rappers on there, you know, they're talking about some troubled stuff. And when I think what I'm really trying to say is, if we are aware of the shadow, then when we look at things more spiritual, it has depth to it, and that, certainly in my filmmaking, I want to bring out. You know, yeah.
I'm still curious about the technicalities, because trying to be a musician myself, I find it fascinating just to put those types of music or performances together. So who was the brain behind that, or how was it organized? Did you have a basic track and allow others play?
So Duncan Bridgman is a genius. He will sit, there's a piece of software called Ableton Live. And Ableton Live, you can change the pitch and the rhythm of a track without changing the personality of it. So if you, for instance, sing into the microphone out of tune at the wrong rhythm, through this software, I can tune your voice and make it in rhythm with the track. Having said that, we had these 13 tracks that all had a click track. So that would have a rhythm to it. And then sometimes they would listen to it, and we would find one of the 13 tracks that had the right rhythm to it. And then in the post-production, you then change the whole emphasis of the tune and raise a tone to then include that other track. But it was amazing how some tracks, they have a completely different backing track. And then we would slightly twist it and make the tune step up like a middle eight. And you would suddenly get into a different personality track and then return to the root track. So music is very strange, actually, how you can experiment And like Duncan would say, if you play a wrong note, do it twice.
Yeah, that's an old trick.
And then everybody feels like it was intentional.
Yeah.
And your mind can then adapt its hearing and find it beautiful. And the same visually, actually. Sometimes you put a shot in that's completely out of context, and your mind can get something very profound out of it. Yeah, it's quite an interesting experiment. And that's what happens when somebody says, go off and do whatever you like. Break the rules. And you get something completely different out of it. Yeah.
And how did you organize the recording? You said that you had 13 tracks, so did you allow various artists to choose what they want to play or sing? Or?
Each artist listened to the bass tracks, and then they would have a tune that they know, or in India, no one plays the same thing twice. So you would get an Indian musician to play something in rehearsal to a backing track, and you'd say, oh, that's great, play that again, and they go, I can't. So often we would have to just record whatever the person was doing and then see what we could do with that one. Hence we had 500 hours of musical recording to then start to weave it in. It's a bit like dreadlocks, you know, you've got that kind of weaved hair together.
To me, it sounds much more scary to edit it than to record it.
Yeah.
Recording might be much more fun than, where do I start? And if you listen to a recording, let's say 10 different takes, you can't remember which one was better.
No, it was a nightmare to edit because, well, it took 3 years to edit that. If you think 1,400 hours into a 90-minute film, you then have to do it. And because I shot every single moment of it, I would come back a year later and I would remember that shoot we had that afternoon where we filmed that couple walking through the gates, and nobody had seen that shot. Because I was the only person who had actually looked through all the footage. But I have this strange photographic memory, so I can suddenly remember, oh yeah, hang on a minute, we did that there, and we were in the middle of the desert, and there was a guy with bagpipes running up and down the beach, playing a silly tune. Let's put that in. So it's a really journey. And when you try and make a spiritual film, often things come up to haunt you and things challenge you in a way that a story wouldn't. Because if you're editing a storyline, like a narrative story, it takes about 5 weeks to edit. But when you can put anything, anywhere, on any track, it's suddenly then you're 2 years, 3 years down the line. And so the process is this: you edit the music, then you put the music of those takes onto and edit those together. Then you go through the interviews and you start to play spoken word of the interviews along in the side. And then you go back to the tapes and you find those cultural shots. Somebody driving past in a cart, or a little child playing on the side of the road. And then you start to put those in gently, and then start to weave together other boxes and slide things around and look for animations, and it's a never-ending story. We could have edited that for the rest of our lives and not been happy, but
one picture is not enough. Frequently you have 4 or 6. So.
Yes, exactly.
What I found also interesting, that the music develops, even though it must have been based on various patterns. Sometimes you listen to a track and it does develop and sort of overflows or leaks over into something completely different seamlessly, I would say.
Yeah, that's the sort of genius of Duncan, the music guy. You know, he can go and record the sounds of a steel factory and make a beautiful track out of it. It's extraordinary. In fact, he worked for 3 years, 18 hours a day, 6 days a week. And you know, he got polyps growing in his bladder because he stopped going to the toilet because he was so obsessed with the music. In fact, he kept slamming his foot down. You know, musicians do that when they're editing music. They slam their leg down, and he cracked little tiny hairline fractures in his leg. And once he'd finished the film, he went to New Zealand for a break, and he tripped over a paving stone and his leg snapped in half. Just tripped over something because of his slamming this one leg down on the ground for 3 years, 18 hours a day to keep the rhythm of the track. So I have deep respect for Duncan. He has a work ethic that I've never met before. And yeah, this. Yeah.
And how did you attract those big names for the movie, like Carlos Santana or the drummer from Police? Can't remember his name.
Well, Santana was recording. Jamie Cato was in the, who was the sort of producer director. He shared a dressing room with Michael Stipe from REM for 3 years. So he would. That's how we got into Michael Stipe's dressing room, and he recorded one part of the track 10 minutes before he went on the stage. In the longer tracks, we got Alanis Morissette, who came and did an afternoon with us, and she doesn't improvise. So we convinced her to write some lyrics and make up a track on the spot, which she very bravely did, because we were asking conventional, really big musicians to be vulnerable and make something up in an afternoon. And that, for a major artist, is a big risk. It's okay for a busker or an Indian tabla player to just sit, listen to the track and just improvise. But for a major name, that's hard. So we had a reputation with the first film, One Giant Leap, and that got very famous. So musicians were a bit keen to get involved in it. But Simon Fuller is not Chris Blackwell. Chris Blackwell, Island Records, everybody loves him. He's a gentleman and a scholar. But Simon Fuller was sacked by the Spice Girls because he made too much money on the merchandise and didn't share it with them. So people were a bit nervous of Simon Fuller, a bit nervous of the contracts. But we won through by just going to the country, talking to the people, meeting them, telling them that we were what we were trying to do, and asking them to risk something. And they, of course, got approval, and they got publishing rights on the part of the track that they'd made up. And we showed it to them, and I don't think one artist said, no, you can't do that. You know, it was all very good.
What about those people in Africa when they complained, like, all Europeans come here to film us and we've had enough and we never get anything out of that?
Well, it's funny because the man who was saying that in the red cape, he's from Gabon. And now Gabon is a country that's very primitive in Africa. If you ever want to go to true Africa, go to Gabon. And they are very into jazz music there, which is bizarre. So you get there and they'll have a jazz band going in the local village made up of bits of polystyrene or bits of wood or an old plank or a machete hanging from a tree stump, and they'll play it like the best jazz musicians you've ever met. And of course they are very outspoken. They haven't had many Westerners come and record them. So they were very confident to complain. Whereas other people, they get a bit drunk with the idea of getting famous because they all have TVs now. They've all got mobile phones. In Africa, they basically scrapped all the telephones, normal landlines, And they all got mobile phones. So they're way, way advanced on mobile phones than even we are. So they've been watching YouTube. I mean, recently my wife and I went to Namibia. Well, it's a desert with the Kalahari Bushmen. And they all want to be rap stars because they're watching YouTube. They're watching rap songs on their local community center or even on their phones. And so 4G, 3G network is rife in Africa.
Yeah.
So they get that feeling that there's a possibility of fame. Whereas in Gabon, they don't have any television. So they get these cameras coming and they're like, immediately they're very honest with it. And we appreciated that. We wanted that message
in a way,
to
it's
come
sad
through.
because as one of those black people who said, well, yeah, you're filming us, but soon you will have no pictures to film because we will all disappear.
Yeah.
And this might be it.
Yeah.
Everybody will wear the same blue jeans, t-shirts and rap the American style.
That was in Malawi. He was very worried. I mean, he spoke French. He was very, very worried that we're recording something that's about to disappear. And we know this from Namibia when we've been dancing with the Kalahari Bushmen, and they have a sacred healing dance ceremonies that I was asked to come and film. And the young people don't want to do that kind of dancing and music because they want to be rap stars.
It's not cool.
They're watching YouTube. They don't want to do their traditional music. So unfortunately, it is on the way out. And that's why I, as a filmmaker, want to record this stuff. So I was invited to Namibia to record the old men, 8 old healers who go out and they do their old healing dance. And they actually invited us over to record it so that their great-grandchildren would see what their grandfathers are doing. Interestingly, though, their wives didn't want us to film it without getting paid. Smart.
Yeah. Another matriarchal society.
Well, yeah, Africa is traditionally matriarchal. The women hold the money, they make the decisions around the villages, and they boss their men around much more than apparently we do in the West. I'm not quite sure that's true there. Anyone else would like to say something?
Anything? This is a small community here, so feel free to say whatever you want to or ask any question. But otherwise, we are not going to force you.
Any filmmakers in the room? What do you guys do for a living? It's not about me. This film, the title is like, what about me? Or what about me? It's all about. These days we are, in my judgment, we hold people up who do glamorous things as somehow intelligent people, somehow knowing something. And you know, this film really is about us taking our insecurities around the world and asking people, saying, look, I have a problem with anger, I have a problem with the voices in my head, can you help me with that? And in my experience as a filmmaker, the quiet people who have normal lives are the new gurus. I'm serious. Those that get a lot of fame, those that get heard a lot, who are used to having their voices out there, are often full of bullshit, including myself. So now, when I make documentaries, I find the shy people at the back of the room, like the gentleman over there not talking, and I would find much more wisdom in his mind than I would find in Eckhart Tolle or Ram Dass or Bhagavan Das. Because in my experience, that wisdom is old. It's the old way. of saying things. It's repeated so many times that it's somehow believed. Whereas the wisdom for today is about what's going on in the person who works in a factory or the person who raises their children. Shy, innocent, vulnerable, that's where the true wisdom that we need to hear. My wife and I just made a documentary about addiction, and we started talking to addicts who were in recovery from alcoholism. And the wisdom we found in those that were in recovery was exactly, in our judgment, the wisdom that us that are in denial of our addictions need to hear. And it was in the very suffering of the normal person where today's gold is. And that's what we found in making these films. Yeah. When we walked, in the first film, we talked to prostitutes about God. We talked to priests about sex. We talked to policemen about vulnerability. Mm-hmm. And when you talk to somebody who's used to talking about a subject they know a lot about, if you talk to them about something that they never normally talk about, you get gold. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So in a way, that for me is the new way of making films. I want to talk to a lady who works in a sweet shop, a tobacconist, and ask her, what does she feel the world needs now? I'm not really that interested in going to the gurus.
Yeah.
I think we are now going into an era where each person needs to find the guru inside of themselves. Mm-hmm. That's what I believe the message of these films is.
Great. Unfortunately, the time will be soon over. So perhaps, if you like this movie, you might come tomorrow. There will be another one by Ben, a completely different subject.
Yeah. Tomorrow evening at 8 o'clock, I'm showing a film written by a young man who has Asperger's syndrome. Okay, so that is mild form of autism. He has a terrible stutter. He wrote this film about what is it like to have Asperger's syndrome. And he wrote a drama, a love story about his life. And it's beautiful. And this is a great example of someone who never speaks because he's got a stutter. So he doesn't speak publicly. But he wrote this story about his personal life, and I think it has an amazing amount of wisdom in it. And we made it for very little money because he saved his wages from 9 years of working in as a filing clerk in a legal business, sleeping in a one-roomed flat in London to make the film, to share with people what having Asperger's is like. And I think he's a genius, and he's a normal man, never been hurt before. So that's an example of what I'm trying to talk about, really.
So if you find another free hour tomorrow night, please do come. I think that you are not going to regret. And now it's time to thank Ben for spending his time with us and for this beautiful movie. And I thank you for coming.
Have a lovely time.